Hello, guys. Welcome to She Scores, where we talk all things women's soccer. I'm your host, Kayla. So, today we are going to look at the U.S. women's national team and China. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about the TST tournament. It literally stands for the soccer tournament. And obviously, we've seen some pretty big names. Obviously, you have the team, the U.S. women. They are defending their title. You have Solo FC with none other than Hope Solo. I've been kind of somewhat watching these games. I'm just like I don't know why I'm watching this on a YouTube page, but I am, and I love it. Especially as someone who played 6v6 soccer. I actually kind of like watching the 7v7, and obviously it's a 7v7 tournament. There's a few teams even for the men's side I'm watching too, so yeah, I cannot wait to see more. Anyway, yeah, we're going to look into the U.S. women's national team and China. Now, I do want to make a little note here. So for expected goals, it's going to be the shots that each team took, because this did not have us on the site I usually use when I get all the data gathered. So we went with shots today. And total shots, I might add. Not like shots on target, we went with total shots. So, yeah. So we're gonna look into the data here. Where do I find it? I have to click these things every time. So yeah, the U.S. women's national team and China. This was the first of their two friendlies. So shots you had for the U.S. 18 to China's 4. Obviously a big jump in numbers there. The U.S. obviously took a lot more chances. Pass correction rate 88% to China's 70%. I think relatively for the numbers here, that is pretty close. That's relatively close. It's not that close, but they're, except for interceptions, that's the closest you're getting. Obviously, with the higher number though here, the U.S. were controlling most of the game. They were getting around the Chinese defense to shoot, whereas China really didn't get that much. Possession, 71% for the U.S., 29% for China. Again, that really just shows that the U.S. was in control of the game. Interceptions, U.S. 8, China 7. I think a lot of that probably came from defense to the midfield, where the U.S. again were controlling a lot of the game and tempo, especially in the midfield, because interceptions don't always have to do with the defense, with the defenders. So yeah, I think a lot of that had to do with the U.S. being able to spot out and any of China's attack. So for formations, I think this is important because the U.S. went with a 4-2-3-1, so which means they were setting themselves up to attack, which the U.S. is very known for, and that's probably one of the best formations with the players they had. China, on the other hand, went with a 4-4-2, and they went with a more defensive block because I think a lot of teams realize that the U.S. is a very high-powered attacking team. Now, you're probably not going to see that from a top 10 team, but China, I think, knows that. Also, I think they just didn't set themselves up to be more of an attacking team, just because, again, they took only 4 shots, because they knew they were going to be dealing a lot with the U.S.'s press, which we're kind of going to get into here, because I think there's some important things to note, which I have a Venn diagram for. Okay, let me find it. So, yeah, the U.S. came ready to play. While it did look like China had a way to somewhat keep them at bay, there were quite a few moments of concern as it looked like China's defense was in shambles, with some aimless clearances and the inability to clear their lines. In the end, China's efforts were not enough to overcome a dominant U.S. team. So I think, especially for the U.S., China, they both were playing like high line defenses, like so they were playing more up the field. So obviously the U.S. had some nice through balls in to get in behind the China's high pressing line, and again that patience in behind, knowing that they were playing a high line, was really good, and that they got a lot of chances from it. Now both teams are obviously playing a high line, and at some moments both teams were getting caught with the high line. But I think a lot of that mostly was for China. With they weren't dealing with the high line pressure, so a lot of the times, there was a lot of times that they were either what I like to call aimless defense, where they were kind of just trying to clear without purpose, or it's like clear it out of the box instead of like, oh, just clear it, and then they're just like hit another player, like an oncoming U.S. player, instead of like what they, an actual clearance. They did do a pretty nice job though with the catching the U.S. offside a lot of the time, as yes, the U.S. were pretty patient. There were some times where they weren't so patient, and they were offsides quite a few times. I'm not exactly sure on the number, but there was a few times the U.S. were offside, and I think China did pretty well, knowing that there are some times that the U.S. doesn't exactly like to play patient, that there are some players that don't play patient. So, yeah. I think, in all honesty, for China, it's more of, and I think a lot of other teams, when they play the U.S., is stop with the aimless defense. Because it's like, yes, you want to clear it out of the box, but you don't want to panic clear. Where it's like, you clear it, and then it's like, okay, I hit a oncoming opponent. And then they have an opportunity to score, so either one of two things happens, maybe actually one of three. Well, the shot gets off, obviously, so either they're going to miss the shot, or the keeper's going to have to make a save, or it's going to become a goal. So obviously the shot's coming off. And there's a lot of, defense, the defense shambles. And playing organized, I think, is a really good, especially for a team. It's like, you don't want to play in shambles. You don't want the chaos. Unnecessary chaos. Like, obviously, yes, get the job done, but it's also like, sometimes you don't need the chaos. We don't need to panic. Sometimes it's like, as yes, kind of look at your surroundings, right? Of like, okay, where can I attempt to clear it to? Not just, oh, shit. Like, I see it a lot, but I'm just like, no, let's not do that. But yeah, I do hope you guys enjoyed today's mini episode, and yeah, I will see you guys next week with a brand new episode. Peace.